Welcome to the Big Bets on Campus Sources Edition presented by WynnBET. This is the BBOC podcast that ties Big J journalism to big bets. I'm Action Network senior writer Collin Wilson, a guy that loves betting on Maction. Happy Maction, everybody. My co-host, the award-winning news-breaking Action Network's own Brett McMurphy. All right, Brett, we got a lot to discuss. It's college football playoff season. It's Maction season. I'm going to start off, we're going to push Kenneth Walker Heisman chatter for later when we get to our Heisman Handicap. Where is Michigan State going to fall in the college football playoff ranking?
Well, if I tell you, then nobody's going to watch the show Tuesday night, right?
Right, absolutely.
Okay, well, then save watching it. Actually, I think Michigan State will be in the top three. We can debate whether they deserve to be based on, advanced stats and metrics and all that. But I just think based on the win against Michigan, the fact, obviously, they are undefeated with a handful of other teams. I think they will be in the top three. I think Georgia will be the obvious number one. Number two, they're not going to put Ohio State up there. I don't know what they're going to do with Oklahoma. I don't think Cincinnati's going to be in the top four.
Yep.
We will find out. They may put them at four. Cincinnati will not be in the top three. I feel that the only three things I feel confident about: Georgia will be number one, Michigan State will be in the top three, and Cincinnati will not be in the top three. After that, pull the names out of a hat.
I completely agree with you. I have not been impressed with Cincinnati the last 2 weeks after me being on some sort of steam train during the summer about how much I love Desmond Ridder, how much I love Cincinnati. But that was based on 2020, where I thought they were a legitimate team. Everybody seems to forget, Cincinnati had Georgia pinned to the mat in the Peach Bowl last year for 3 quarters. And JT Daniels had to score 3 touchdowns in the 4th quarter to win that game. And so the projection for this year was that, hey, this is a Cincinnati defense that can play with Georgia. This is a Cincinnati offense that can play with Georgia. This Cincinnati this year, this 2021 version, is nothing like what I saw last year. And they've proven it the last 2 weeks. I wouldn't be surprised, Brett, if they're outside of the top 4. Let's move on to another team. There's going to be outrage when Oregon is ranked much lower than Ohio State. Is there a legitimate reason the Buckeyes are ahead of the Ducks without saying, I don't even want to turn on the TV tomorrow night? I'm not interested in hearing all these people on ESPN telling me eye test. What is the real reason that Ohio State is going to be ranked ahead of Oregon?
I don't think they will. I think the committee will value head-to-head. I've got Oregon on my above Ohio State on my top 25 ballot. I can't answer for the other 60 individuals on why they have Ohio State over Oregon. The game was played. It was in Columbus. Oregon's lost one game. They lost it when their offensive coordinator wasn't there on a controversial / bad call against Stanford. I think we talked about this last week. Yeah, I think Oregon will be above Ohio State.
Yeah, that's one thing I'll be looking for, because Ohio State is ahead of Oregon. I don't even know why we do these shows. Of course, most years I wonder why we do this college football playoff show a month in advance anyways. But, I kind of feel the same way about Notre Dame. Notre Dame continues to float up into the top 10. I see that they're number 8 in your AP vote, but they're kind of tied to Cincinnati, right? I mean, their losses to Cincinnati. So as Cincinnati goes, Notre Dame goes, which makes me think that Notre Dame has no shot to get into the college football playoff whatsoever.
Yeah, and you know what? I understand that how you value or don't value Notre Dame, but to be very honest, who else can you put up there? I mean, there's really nobody else you can put up there above Notre Dame. They did have the lopsided win against Wisconsin, albeit that was kind of misleading because of turnovers. A win against Purdue wasn't bad. They won at Virginia Tech, and they handled USC and North Carolina. So they're beating teams that, are above 500, which is more than you can say for a lot of schools. But yeah, I don't think they've got any shot to get to the playoff, because obviously they lost a head-to-head to Cincinnati. And I just think there's too many bodies for them to jump over at 11-1 to make the top 4 when we get to the first week in December.
Yeah, let's switch. Let's pivot off. We're going to talk about the playoff later. Gary Patterson gets fired after being at TCU since 1998. He took over as head coach in 2000. This is a guy that's won Coach of the Year in Conference USA. Mountain West, and the Big 12. In 21 years, he made 18 bowls. So it was a little bit of a shock to me. But what is next for TCU and what is next for Patterson?
It'll be fascinating to see if Patterson still wants to coach. I think he probably won't get a Power 5 offer because the Big 12 and kind of where he's at, in the no disrespect to TCU. I'm an Oklahoma State grad, so I know what the Big 12 is about. But you're kind of right now at the bottom rung of the Power 5 right now. So I think if he has any opportunity, it would be at the Group of 5 level. There's certainly going to be plenty of openings in the Group of 5 in the coming weeks. The unknown is, does he want to drop down to the Group of 5 and continue being a head coach? Or would he rather maybe go somewhere to a Power 5 school and be a defensive coordinator, which is what he's known for? It's funny, it was a few years ago. I can't remember what year it was, but Kansas State had printed up these T-shirts because one year they beat all the teams they played in the state of Texas when they're, Big 12 schedule. Well, Patterson saw this somewhere. Somehow somebody got that T-shirt, and actually the week of the game, he put it up in the TCU locker room to fire up the team. Sure enough, TCU beat Kansas State. So it's kind of it's interesting that the links that some of these coaches will go for motivation. That oh, hey guys, look, they printed up a T-shirt making fun of us. Let's go beat them. But whatever. Look, he did an incredible job at TCU. A lot of people don't realize this. TCU won a Rose Bowl. They were this close to getting in to the BCS national title game. The battles between TCU and Boise State were legendary, and he did just a tremendous job there. So we'll have to see where he ends up in the coming weeks or months.
Yeah, I'm really interested. The coaching carousel. Last week, I believe you said that I think there had been 6 coaches that were gone. We would have triple that amount. We are well on that pace. I'm sure your phone can't keep a battery in it right now. I have to ask. Bruce Feldman put out a story earlier today that said Florida's just not trying. I don't know if they're just not trying. They definitely got whooped, a game that they did not cover. They did not help and get the over, although Georgia scored bunches and bunches of points from a middle eight perspective, like with 2 minutes left in each quarter. Do we have any? Is Dan Mullen comfortable right now? How's Dan Mullen in the media down in Gainesville?
Look, Mullen's going to survive unless something weird happens and he loses out, but it's not trending in the right direction for Dan Mullen. He's 2-7. The Gators are 2-7 in their last 9 against Power 5 opponents. And, I talked to somebody in Gainesville today, and they said that they don't believe Mullen's in any danger of getting fired, but he's certainly going to have to make some changes on his staff. Most notably, Todd Grantham, the defensive coordinator, which you broke the news on Saturday. I didn't know Florida had a defensive coordinator, but you enlightened me on that one. I think he would probably not be back in Gainesville next year. There's probably another assistant or two that probably won't be in Gainesville next year. But it's so crazy, and that's what I was talking to the source about. It's so crazy when you think about Florida, because remember on September 18th when they took Alabama to the wire, and if not for a ill-conceived 2-point conversion, very easily maybe could have won that game. Then they beat Tennessee, and then since then, the only one they have is Vanderbilt. So it's funny how things have changed so quickly, and I think part of it is his attitude kind of rubs the Florida fan base the wrong way. That's not a criticism of Mullen. It's just kind of who he is. And it's funny. Fan bases are like this for any coach. If their coach is winning, then their coach is cool or quirky or unique or whatever. But then when he's losing, he's like aloof, disinterested, a clown, whatever adjective you want to use. So, the best thing for Mullen is he just needs to win. What he did, I'll give you the early scoop on my dumpster team of the week this week. I'm not going to wait till later in the show, but it's Florida with an asterisk. It's Dan Mullen, because on Monday he shut down all media access for the rest of the week. All players, all his media availability. The only media availability he will do will be on the SEC conference call later this week. I mean, how many times do these coaches have to realize that when things go bad, or you have challenges, or you don't maybe agree with something that's written, or an opinion of a reporter or something, the number one thing you don't do is shut off media access, because all that's going to do is draw attention to everything. Now people outside of Gainesville are hearing about it, they're seeing about it, and other reporters will look into it, and it just kind of snowballs. Take the good with the bad. You're a grown up, you can handle it. If there's something that's inaccurate, or character assassination or whatever, talk to the reporter, have the PR staff talk to the reporter, whatever. I don't think it's that case. I just think, he was not happy with some line of questioning after the game about how, I think Kirby Smart talked about how the recruits had helped Georgia in the past few years, and specifically in this game, and Mullen downplayed it. Well, we're, about recruiting. So it's not a good look right now for the Gators, but the best news for Florida is at South Carolina, Samford, at Missouri, and Florida State. Should be an easy 4-0 finish for the Gators, and then who knows where they go off to playing a bowl game.
And a relatively young team. I mean, last year they lost they lost more than anybody on the offensive side of the ball from last year. So I think the most interesting trend from the pandemic football of 2020 was Dan Mullen turning heel, wearing Darth Vader masks, coming out of the locker room and pumping up the crowd. I've never seen a head coach come out and do that like it was a WWE match or something. So quite interesting stuff coming out of Gainesville down there.
So, Collin, we are going to talk about the college football playoff in depth in a little bit. We will provide some insight on who might have some value when the rankings come out, if you want to put a wager on who may get to the playoff or win the championship. But first, Collin, yes, I have another question for you. I'll give you some time, though. I asked you this before, but now I've actually got the correct answer. So forget what you told me last time we talked. In the 7-year history of the college football playoff rankings, how many teams have been ranked number one, and can you name them? I will provide the answer a little bit later.
Well, yeah. I mean, off the top of my head, I know Mississippi State and Dak was the very first team ever.
Yeah, you can think about it.
All right.
We'll circle back. Real quick. So, while Dan Mullen has shut down all media access this week, I have one last Florida-Georgia story I forgot to mention on last week's pod. It's one of the most iconic plays in Georgia-Florida history. In 1980, number 2 ranked Georgia, featuring freshman running back Herschel Walker, trails Florida 21-20 in the final minute. The Bulldogs, third down on its own 7. Georgia goes on to win the national championship. So why am I bringing this up? Well, now here's the rest of the story. So back then, when you were a photographer in a newspaper, you had to actually, after the game, you would actually have to drive to the newspaper to turn in your film so the photos could be in the paper the next day. A photographer with the Jacksonville Times-Union, who was covering the game, went into his office. The editors were like, you got to have a shot of Lindsey Scott scoring the winning touchdown. Do you have a shot? The photographer's like, oh man, you're not going to believe it. My camera jammed. I didn't get any shot on the touchdown. They can't believe it. So they have to use photos from Associated Press. So they use photos from Associated Press while the sports editor is going through the photos provided by Associated Press. In one of the photos with Lindsey Scott streaking down the sideline, there's a picture of the Jacksonville Times-Union photographer with his arms above his head, celebrating Lindsey Scott running down the sideline. A little footnote, that was the former photographer for the Jacksonville Times-Union. So just a note to any future journalist out there, do not cheer on the sideline. There's cameras everywhere.
No, he was trying to unjam his camera by cheering for his team.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, actually, I never even think you never even think about how hard it is for the cameramen on the sidelines to actually focus on doing their job instead of cheering for the team that they're always snapping. All right, let's move on to it's a good story, especially back then. How do you get caught back then? Barely anybody had a camera. There was no social media. How can you lose your job back then? All right. Let's move on to the AP Top 25 versus the Action Network Top 25. All right, Brett. So this is a segment where I feel like it's going to be real quick for us from here on out because really the college football playoff is going to take over. You and I still agree on our number 1 and 2 teams at Georgia and Alabama. You put Michigan State all the way up at number 3. When we do power ratings, we can't give anybody a 20-point bump. It would look very unfavorable to some of our people that wager on games if we all of a sudden just said Michigan State would be like a 10-point favorite over Oregon. But yeah, so they're still down at 27 for me. You and I both agree OU is at number 4. There's not that much separation between. I've told everybody before there is a real sandwich between like spot 7 to spot 30. Everybody's within like 3.5 power rating points. So going through your list, it makes sense where some of these teams are where they are, like why I'm 37 on Wake Forest, you're 9th on Wake Forest. We're going to talk about Sam Hartman and Wake Forest's odds coming up a little bit later. I think, Auburn up to 13. I've got them power ranked 5th. They became 5th for a reason. That's because Florida finally took a drop. It's not that I gave them a whole bunch of credit for actually winning at home in a game against Ole Miss where they should have. It's just that a lot of other teams kind of fell after them. I mean, for the top 10 as a whole, Brett, I dropped a lot of teams. Like Georgia was not that impressive. If you look at it, they only had 2 offensive drives that were longer than 3 plays, and they turned out to be field goals. I mean, if you look at Ohio State, not that impressive box score whatsoever. Did you kind of had like a sinking feeling about your top 5? But I say top 10, but really top 5 this week? Like I didn't think they were elite at all.
It's hard. I mean, you have everyone, you make valid points, but you can't leave like 5 through 8 blank.
Right.
You got to put somebody up there. And while we're at it, what in the war you moved Florida from 7 to 6.
Yeah.
Florida has lost 4 games. They are ranked number 6. This is what drives people crazy as far as the selection committee, because sometimes they think very similar to how you think. They don't penalize schools for losses, and it's hard for the average fan to wrap their mind around that. I understand what you're saying. 2 teams play on a neutral field. This is how the game's going to be, as far as the point spread. But, that's what really gets people is when they see a 4-loss Florida ranked 6th, and then you wonder, what if they were 8-0? They'd
Right.
have to be the number 1 team in the country. But, look, there's going to be a lot of complaints about the college football playoff rankings, no matter what schools that Ohio State and Oregon are ahead of that are undefeated, because people automatically think if you don't lose a game, you should be ranked higher than everybody else, unless that team's UTSA, and then nobody talks about it because nobody's been on the UTS bandwagon. Everyone's just been saying how deserving Cincinnati is because of the previous years, which, as you mentioned perfectly, last year has nothing to do with this year.
Well, yeah, there's 2 points I want to make here, and we'll talk about them. But I mean, I think everybody should understand from a grading process, what I do with our Action Network power ratings is every little single detail in the box score gets looked at. And when you look at the box score, let's just blank out the score, right? The 34-7, let's just blank it out, not pay attention to it. Florida had more first downs. Total yards, Florida had 1 more total yard, even though they ran a little bit more plays. I mean, their yards per play were still 5.5 in passing, 4.1 yards per rush. Each team had 3 turnovers. The difference is every time that Florida turned the ball over, it turned into easy points for Georgia. So, and then when you go through the drive log, I just 8 play drive for Georgia turned into a missed field goal. We got punt, 11 play drive field goal. Their points came off of some really chaotic defensive plays, or the fact that there was a pick 6, or the fact that there was, field position spotted down at like the 20-yard line. So it was a very beneficial game for Georgia. I don't think they beat them as bad as that 34-7 score. I'm waiting for the floor to fall out on Florida. Now, that LSU game, they got trounced, like ran all over, but at the same time, they scored over 40 points. So they didn't take that big of a hit then either. But I mean, I will say this from a power rating standpoint. If you guys haven't checked out the Action Network power ratings over at actionnetwork.com, Florida's 89.5 in power rating. And there's approximately 12 teams I'm looking at within a point of them. So, I mean, they're really close to falling down outside the top 25. You mentioned UTSA. Jeff Traylor gets a new contract extension. Is that ironclad? He's not going to go anywhere. He's been one of the most quiet, not talked about, successful coaching jobs 10 years out there. He's not going to leave San Antonio.
Well, if he can, it's going to cost him more money. But I think that was a preemptive strike. Now with the Texas Tech job open, now with TCU open, he's got a lot of ties in the state of Texas. And, give the Roadrunners credit for doing what they can to make him as happy as possible. Doesn't mean he's going to be there forever, but at least they're showing their appreciation for the undefeated season so far for the Roadrunners.
This is the new age of college football where contracts are being extended and contracts are being terminated on the week of Halloween instead of the Sunday after the final week of college football, like after Thanksgiving. It's very interesting how proactive some of these ADs have been behaving. Let's move on to our next segment, the Heisman Handicap. All right, so the Heisman Handicap, let's talk about the Heisman first. Odds presented by via WynnBET. Then we're going to bring in something, Brett, that since you're brand new to the company, you've never been a part of it. Every year, Stuckey and I award the Action Network Gambling Heisman Trophy. It's presented by the Action Network Gambling Heisman Trust. Our previous winners, 2018, Trevor Lawrence, 2019, Lynn Bowden Jr., 2020, Drew Plitt of Ball State. Before we get to that, let's talk about the actual Heisman that you're going to be voting in. Not much movement other than Matt Corral has dropped all the way down to 7-1. Desmond Ridder has dropped down to 40-1. The rest of the board, 60-1, 100-1s on Zamir Whites, Brian Robinson Jr.'s. None of these players have the chance to come in and actually catch this. It is a pretty tight race between Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, but there is a new player, and it is Kenneth Walker III. Now at WynnBET, he's the field is listed at 2-1, and I have to assume that includes Caleb Williams. That includes Kenneth Walker III. You can find other shops that are posting Kenneth Walker in at about 5-1, 6-1. What is your take? If Michigan State wins the Big Ten, because it's such a team associated award, if Michigan State wins the Big Ten, does he win the Heisman over Bryce Young?
No, I don't think it's automatic. I think if Alabama wins the SEC title, I think Bryce Young wins it because he's a quarterback. He's putting up monster numbers. Look, Alabama was off last week, so they're out of sight, out of mind. Obviously, Kenneth Walker, just a tremendous, tremendous game against Michigan. I understand how it works. You have a great game. Now you're the Heisman favorite, whatever. He wasn't the Heisman favorite a week ago when he only had 84 yards and 23 carries against Indiana. He wasn't the Heisman favorite when he had 61 yards on 19 carries against Nebraska. And that's kind of like last week I said, unless he can have something like a Barry Sanders type finish where he runs for 300 every game with 5 or 6 touchdowns, I think it's just too hard because it's become a quarterback award and it's going to be that much more difficult. But, if he can keep putting up 200 yards and 4 or 5 touchdowns, especially the final 2 weeks at Ohio State and against Penn State, and both of those are wins, then I think he's got a legitimate shot. I still wouldn't pick him to win it. I just think it's too difficult for running backs. I still think it's going to be Bryce Young. And we talked about Matt Corral. It was a month ago. Matt Corral was the leader. And what did we say, Colin? We said, don't put any money on Matt Corral because, look at Ole Miss's schedule. They still have Auburn. They still have Texas A&M. They still have Alabama. He's going to have to win out to have a chance to win it. Sure enough, they lost a game and now he's shuffled down in the deck.
Yeah. So another name we've got to bring up. We have to talk about this because you said it's a quarterback driven award and it's team dependent. Well, Brett, there's an undefeated team out there with a quarterback that's throwing up crazy numbers, and that's Sam Hartman. Can be found out there at about 40-1. Wake Forest, Heisman quarterback. Is it possible with an undefeated season against a very weak ACC?
You summed it up there. Weak ACC. There's no ranked opponents for Wake Forest, at least not in the rest of the regular season, unless NC State gets back up in there. And then who's he going to get in the ACC title game? I don't think it's enough. I mean, look, it's an incredible story what Wake's done, and Dave Clawson. We talk about all these openings. If I was an AD, well, I wouldn't be on this podcast. But if I was an AD, Dave Clawson would be at the top of my wish list because that guy does more with less than anybody around. And look, I know it was Army, but I also know that you and Stuckey were talking about how good Army defends the pass and yada, yada, yada. And then Wake puts up a 70 burger on the Black Knight. So I love Sam Hartman. I just think, he's hurt because of how weak the schedule is. He's got no marquee games on there. He's not going to get the same, prime time viewership that Bryce Young will get at Alabama, that Kenneth Walker will get at Michigan State, that CJ Stroud will get at Ohio State. So Hartman may get to New York, but I still think he's a long shot.
Yeah. So tread lightly there with Sam Hartman at 40-1. Probably look at some Wake Forest ACC odds, although I believe that is below 40-1, but you've got a really steep uphill climb. Bryce Young plus 150, got to beat Georgia. CJ Stroud 2-1, I still think is the one that you and I have been talking about all along. I think the value is finally gone on that number. Ohio State's going to have to win out for him to win it, and Matt Corral is going to have an unbelievable November to even be mentioned and get an invite up to New York. So we are going to stick with Stroud. We're going to say pass on Sam Hartman. Brett, I'm introducing you to the Action Network Gambling Heisman Trophy. In case you weren't around, this is awarded to a player that has made us a lot of money on a team that has gone almost perfect against the spread. And this is the MVP of that team that has won us a bunch of tickets. Trevor Lawrence came in for Kelly Bryant in 2018. Clemson all but swept the remaining part of the schedule, won the national championship. Lynn Bowden Jr., I believe Kentucky dropped just one game against the spread that season. And last year, Drew Plitt, although I think I was overruled on the Zaven Collins for Tulsa. Tulsa was a machine covering against the spread thanks to Zaven Collins. But Drew Plitt won it for Ball State last year. Couple of names here, Brett. We have Syracuse 8-1 against the spread, led by Sean Tucker, 11 touchdowns, top 10 in yards after contact. He's fifth in missed tackles forced. Sincere McCormick, we just got done talking about UTSA. Both Sincere McCormick and Frank Harris are on the 7-1 against the spread UTSA Meep Roadrunners. Harris is top 15 in big time throw percentage. He's got a 16-3 TD to INT. And then Kenneth Walker III, Michigan State 6-1 against the spread. He is PFF's leading graded rusher, PFF's leader in missed tackles forced, PFF's leader in elusiveness, and second in the nation in yards after contact after Travion Henderson. And then what would it be if we didn't have Matt Araiza on this? San Diego State just 5-3 against the spread, but they couldn't have done it without their punter. Leads punts in the nation inside 20. He has had 29 of them this year. Longest punt of the season at 86 yards. And 3 of 5 field goals from beyond 50. 3 of 5 field goals from beyond 50 yards. Pretty amazing special teams player. Brett, if we had to vote on the Action Network Gambling Heisman Trophy for these teams that have been outstanding against the spread, which one of these players are you taking?
So you don't do this at the end of the season? You do it now?
No, we're getting it warmed up. This comes.
Oh, you're getting it warmed up.
We'll cut our last sources pod. We're just getting warmed up right now about who we want to take. Okay. You have a certain player?
I would do a write-in candidate for the UTEP defense because what Minor Nation has done has been incredible, but you got to vote for one person. I would go with Kenneth Walker based strictly on the fact that I think it's more surprising right now that the Spartans are undefeated than UTSA. I know UTSA opened at Illinois, but that's a 500 team. You know, they've won three. UTSA has won 3 games outright as an underdog. Michigan State has won 3 games outright as an underdog. You can tell me, but I think Michigan State's already blown past their projected win total for the year. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if UTSA has done that yet. So at this point in the season, I would go with Kenneth Walker.
Yeah, I like that one too. That's the leader in the clubhouse for me. I do have a soft spot for UTSA, and I always have a soft spot for San Diego State, but we will keep track of this. Generally, the person that wins this, they lead their team to almost a perfect season against the spread. Kenneth Walker in the clubhouse is leader at this point in the season. All right, let's move on to the playoff payoff. All right, Brett, these odds are via WynnBET. Georgia -110, Alabama +275, Ohio State 8-1, Oklahoma 8-1, Cincy 40-1. You and I are a little doubtful about where they're going to come out here on the college football playoff, whether they're going to be in the top 4. Oregon 50-1. That is a big number. Michigan 80-1. There's going to be a college football playoff piece that comes out tomorrow morning, Tuesday morning. It's going to be a sort of a bracket seeding, an approach that I take as to how they're going to fill the 4 spots. And essentially it's the SEC is going to fill one of these spots. If Georgia loses to Alabama in the SEC championship, that's going to fill one of the spots. If OU wins out, that fills one of the spots. If Ohio State wins out, that fills one of the spots. If Oregon wins out, that fills one of the spots. So, Brett, if Oregon wins out, they're in the college football playoff. So 50-1 has got to be a little bit intriguing, right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, I got them earlier in the year at the 35-1 after they beat Ohio State. Now they have better odds because of that loss. But yeah, I think if they win out, they somehow, some way, a 12-1 Pac-12 champion will get into the playoff. I know there's a million different scenarios, but that's really the only thing out there that I see that has any real value this week. Everything's, the best numbers are gone from a few weeks ago. Certainly anything involving Alabama or Georgia and Ohio State and or Oklahoma. So you're kind of taking a long shot now for anybody other than those 4.
Yeah, I feel like Oklahoma is pretty much a shoo-in to make the college football playoff. You may disagree with your Oklahoma State alumni stuff, but they are on a bye week. They only have 3 games left, and then they get to the Big 12 championship game. You and I have had talks about what's going to happen in Bedlam, what happens every year in Bedlam, but Oklahoma could drop a game this month. They're still going to be in the Big 12 championship, and they're probably still going to make the playoff even if they drop a game. So I feel like Oklahoma at 8-1, I'm not saying that it has value, but they're the ones that have the cushion and the padding to lose a game this month and still make the playoff. As far as Oregon goes, they have no cushion, and they're going to have to go to Rice-Eccles and play Utah. And if they survive that, they might have to play Utah again in Las Vegas. So there's no wiggle room for Oregon whatsoever. I'm not saying there's value on Oklahoma, but if you don't have an Oklahoma ticket, they have the most likely path of being in the college football playoff.
So, Collin, earlier I asked you for which teams have been ranked number 1 in the 7-year history of the college football playoff. How many teams, and can you name them? You've had some time to think about it, so fire away.
Okay, I'm going to go Alabama, Clemson, LSU, Mississippi State.
You're 4 for 4.
You're not going to let me know how many more I got to go?
Nope. Okay, I'll be nice. 2 more.
2 more. I'm wrong, but I'm going to say Ohio State and Georgia.
You are correct, sir.
Yes.
Those are the 6. Georgia will be ranked number 1 on Tuesday. It will be only the 3rd week that Georgia has ranked number 1. That is the fewest number of weeks, tied with Ohio State and Mississippi State, who also have been ranked 3 times.
Yeah, Mississippi State
the number
really
1 spot.
A lot of the Dak Prescott season really gets a lot of people with the Mississippi State. It's kind of hard to believe that happened, but I was a little confused on the Georgia one because when they went out to the Rose Bowl to face Baker Mayfield, they were the number 2 seed. OU
Actually, they were the number 3 seed.
They were the number 3 seed, and OU was the number 2 seed. But I forget that they started the 2017 rankings number 1 for 2 weeks before they took a loss and dropped to 7th. And that's when Alabama got into the pole position before they eventually lost it and Clemson took it. So wild in 2017. We may have another season like that. Nobody has ever seen anything like 2007. We need 2007 back when a 2-loss LSU team beat Ohio State for the national title. So
I covered the University of South Florida back then, and USF ranked number 2 in the country. That was the most bizarre time ever. I'll never forget it.
All right, Brett. So you and I are saying Oregon 50-1. They got to win out 5 games. Pac-12 championship, probably against Utah again. They got to go to Utah and win. But if there's one on the board that we like, that's it. The safest play on the board is OU at 8-1. That's the one team that actually can afford a loss in the month of November.
So, Collin, here's a couple of nuggets for our listeners when they're watching Tuesday's show to keep in mind if they want to place a wager on who they think will win the championship. Keep this in mind. The eventual national champion, their rank at this point of the season, 5 of the last 6 ranked no lower than number 4. Your national champion ranked in the top 4 at this time. The only time it didn't happen was 2014. The first ranking, Ohio State was all the way back at number 14. So obviously anything can happen, but history tells us when the rankings come out, the national champion is going to be ranked in those top 4 teams. One other thing real quickly, of the 28 playoff teams over the past 7 years, only 5 did not rank in the top 6 of the first college football playoff ranking. So keep that in mind. That means that historically 3 of 4 or 4 of 4 of the semifinalists will reside in the top 6 when the rankings are revealed on Tuesday.
So cracking that top 6 is really key for everybody. But this first one, big time. I mean, if Cincinnati falls to 7, it's done. And, you know, I think the thing that, I mean, Brett, really the thing that got me about Cincinnati is that I went back and reviewed last year. And if you notice, like they slid, that this game against Tulsa kept getting postponed for COVID or whatever. There was no traveling going on. Cincinnati did nothing to hurt themselves. And 3-loss Florida jumped them. 2-loss Oklahoma jumped them. And that's why I'm so bearish on Cincinnati right now. Like, even if they end up 4 or 5, whatever, they don't have the remaining strength of schedule to pull this off. So, yeah, I mean, it's important to be in the top 6 tomorrow on Tuesday night, but I don't think it looks good for Cincinnati whatsoever.
There will be a huge outcry from people who think they belong. I think if you look at it subjectively, I don't think they do belong, but that's the beauty of college football. Everybody thinks they know it all. And bottom line is our opinions don't matter, Collin. It's the 13 individuals that vote on the selection committee.
I'd love to be a fly on the wall to hear them tell me why Ohio State's better than Oregon. That's a tough case to make. That's going to do it for us. This has been Big Bets on Campus Sources Edition. Tomorrow afternoon, you can hear our red hot group of 5 experts, Mike Iannello, Mike Calabrese, on our G5 deep dive episode. And late Thursday night, Stucky and I will return for our Week 10 betting preview, all right here on the BBOC podcast. Brett's got to get back to staying on the phone with coaches that are looking for jobs, and I've got to get back to studying some action. Thanks for joining me, Brett. See everybody at the window.